guys, so here's part 2 of the 2.5 notes. Now we're going to go ahead and use long division with polynomials. Okay, so we're going to do 3x to the 4th minus 5x cubed plus 4x minus 6 and divided by x squared minus 3x plus 5. Okay, so the x squared minus 3x plus 5, we're going to kind of go off of how we did the division here with numbers. So basically our second part, so like the number 3 was our second part, that one on the outside. So that means our x squared minus 3x plus 5 is going to go on the outside as well. Now remember when we did basically like synthetic substitution and we did the idea of placeholders when we are missing a term, we actually will use that same concept here. So like with the x squared minus 3x plus 5, if we had a missing term, like if we didn't have the x or the 5, then we would use 0 as a placeholder, but we have every term. But let's look at the first polynomial. So we do have the 3x to the 4th, okay? Then we have our next term, which should be the x to the 3rd term. But do we have an x squared term? No. So what we need to do is use 0 as a placeholder. So please make sure you don't forget that, okay? Now we go to our x term, and then we do the constant, okay? So if you need to, I'm going to go ahead and do this really lightly. It's like need to have a placeholder for missing terms. Okay, so now we're going to use the same process as we did when we basically did it with the numbers, okay? Now this is going to be a little bit different, okay? Because we always thought 3 times what gave us our number. That's actually what you're going to be doing, but now just with variables. So we always want to match the first term. So we have to, in this case, match the 3x to the 4th. We got to match the coefficient, and we got to match the exponent. So when we think about it, x squared times what gives us 3x to the 4th. Let's first talk about numbers, right? Okay, so we have 1. 1 times what will give us the 3? Well, that's going to be our 3. Okay? Then, x squared times what gives us x to the 4th? Well, that's going to be x squared. Okay? So the number, or the term that I'm multiplying, that's going to go on top, just like when we did with the numbers. So if I thought about it, when I did the 15, right, I did 3 times what gives me 15? The 5. And notice that the 5 went on the top of our bar here, okay? So we're doing the same thing. So I do that x squared times 3x squared, so that gives me 3x to the 4th. Now, we do have multiple terms, so now we got to take this 3x squared, and we're going to multiply by the negative 3x and by the 5, because we have to finish this whole thing out. So 3x squared times negative 3x, I guess, is going to give me negative 9x cubed. And I do the same thing with the 5, so 3x squared times 5 gives me 15x squared. That's why we got to add a placeholder, because we are going to do that. Now, our next step, we are going to subtract, just like we did with the numbers, okay? So we need to subtract. Now, because we are doing with polynomials, sometimes we make mistakes. So I'm going to change my addition sign, change my subtraction sign into addition, and then I'm going to change the sign of each term afterwards. So my 3x to the 4th becomes negative, my 9x cubed becomes positive, and then my 15x squared becomes negative. Now I do vertical addition here. So of course we get 0. That should what happened. So if you don't get 0, recheck your work. Now I just combine my coefficients. I get plus 4x cubed and then minus 15x squared. Now, just like when we did it with the numbers, I need to bring down what's next. Now, I also have to bring down everything else, just because we will have multiple terms to get rid of. So I need to bring down the 4x and bring down the negative 6. Okay, now our new first term we're trying to match is this 4x cubed. So I need to think x squared times what gives me this 4x cubed. Let's think about how can we get to this 4. Know that my coefficient in front of the x squared is 1. 1 times what gives me 4? That's going to be a positive 4. Now let's think about the exponent. So x squared times what gives me x cubed? That's just going to be an x. Okay, so now I do my 4x times the x squared. That is going to give me the 4x cubed. Then I take my 4x and multiply by everything else. So I'm going to do 4x times negative 3x, which gives me negative 12x squared, and do 4x times positive 5, which gives me plus 20. And that's going to be x. Okay, just like we did last time, I'm going to subtract, but I'm going to actually do everything that's in the red, so the 4x cubed minus 12x squared plus 20x. I'm going to change all those signs and change my subtraction into an addition to make this a little bit easier. Okay, now my vertical addition. So of course, if we know here, so these canceled out, these will cancel out. That should be what happens. If not, rethink your work. Now, negative 15x squared plus 12x squared, that gives me negative 3x squared. Okay, then I have minus 16x and then minus 6. Okay, we are not done. Okay, because still x squared can still go into 3x squared. Okay, so once again, we have to think about, okay, number-wise, right? So we know that the coefficient in front of our x squared is 1. 1 times what will give us this negative 3? That is going to be negative 3. Okay? Now, x squared times what gives us x? Well, that's just going to be 1. So we're not really multiplying it by any 3, or any x's, excuse me. So we're going to take our negative 3, multiply by x squared, so we have negative 3x squared. Then negative 3 times the negative 3x, that's going to give me a positive 9x. And negative 3 times 5, that gives me negative 15. Now I'm going to do my vertical addition. So I'm going to subtract, but I'm going to change all the signs. So I changed that subtraction to addition and change all the signs of the terms behind it. Now I combine my terms. So of course these cancel out. They should always cancel out. If they don't, then you need to rethink your work. Then we have negative 16 plus a negative 9. That's going to give us negative 25x. And then negative 6 plus 15, that's going to give us plus a 9 there. Okay? Okay, now notice, can x squared go into a negative 25x? Meaning, is there something x squared times x, or x squared times something to give us x? No. So actually, in fact, this negative 25x plus 9, that is going to be called our remainder. Okay, so it is possible to have a remainder. So how we're going to finally write our answer is we're going to take everything that we see above, the 3x squared plus 4x minus 3, and rewrite that down here. And now we're going to add the remainder. Now we're just not going to add it normally. We actually have to put it over our second polynomial. So that's going to be the x squared minus 3x plus 5. So we need to make sure we do that. Now that's going to be the added part, okay? And then this will be our final answer. Okay? I know that was a lot, but I think we can get through it there. Okay. Okay, make sure you, we're going to now do the next, actually, part here, or next example. And what I would like you to do is actually pause the video and try this on your own. Okay, let's see what you got here. So I have my x plus 3, and then I have my 2x cubed, then I should have x squared, then an x, then a 5. So I don't need any placeholders because I have all my terms. Same thing with the x plus 3. Okay, so now I need to think what goes into it. So I have 2x squared. Now another way you can do this is if you don't want to start at the very beginning, whatever you get, which we get 2x squared, you can put that above the same term. So since we are multiplying the x by an x squared, you can put that above the x squared as well. It's just another way of writing it. Okay, so we should get 2x cubed when we multiply, and then 2x squared plus 3 gives us plus 6x squared. We're going to do some vertical addition. So I subtract, but change it to addition, subtraction, subtraction. What happens to our first term? That should cancel out. And And now I'm left with negative 5x squared. Bring everything else down. So minus 8x plus 5. Okay, now we need to match our new first term, which is the 5x squared. So x times what gives us negative 5x squared? Well, that is going to be a negative 5x. So I get negative 5x squared. Then negative 5x times my 3. That's going to give me negative 15x. I do some subtraction, but change that to addition. This becomes addition, and this also becomes addition. What happens to my first two terms? They should cancel out. And so I'm left with 7x. And then I do bring down the next term, the plus 5. Now, can x go into 7x? Yes, it can. It can actually go into it 7 times. So I have my plus 7. So I get 7x, and then 7 times 3 gives me plus 21. And once again, subtraction, change that to addition, minus, minus. Of course, these two should cancel out. And then I do 5 minus 21, which gives me negative 16. This is what we call our remainder. So now let's put everything together here. So I have 2x squared minus 5x plus 7. Then I'm going to do a plus negative 16. I think it's just a lot easier. And then we put that over x plus 3. And I knew negative 16 was my remainder because I know x times something can't give me negative 16. Okay? So that would be my final answer. Okay, make sure you watch part 3 of these 2.5 notes.